Good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar. Today, we're going to focus on the withdrawal of GoSmart and the integration of its replacement, CSCS Smart Check. I'm Alan O'Neill, Head of Communications at CSCS, and with me today is my colleague Gary Mortimer, Head of Operations, and we also have Matthew Rogerson, who is producing today's event, and it's Matthew who will chair the Q&As once the presentation is completed. But before we begin, I'd just like to run through a bit of housekeeping, please. Firstly, please ensure you have the most recent version of Microsoft Teams installed. That way you'll get the best quality out of today's event. Secondly, your microphones should automatically be turned off. If not, please ensure that you mute your microphone, as this will help us block out any of the background noises. And next up, please use the chat facility to log your questions as we go through the presentation. When we get to the Q&As, Matthew will have identified the key themes that are being raised, and he will ask the questions on your behalf. Now, with so many on today's webinar, which is great, by the way, it's unlikely that we will have time to answer everybody's questions, but there is a FAQ section on the CSCS website, and you will find all the FAQs there. Any new Q&As that arrive today, we will ensure they get uploaded on to the website as well. And finally, the webinar, it is being recorded, and we will issue the recording after the event. So could I ask that you share the recording with any of your colleagues who think that you think will benefit from it. So that's the housekeeping. Before jumping into the presentation, I'd just like to quickly take you through what it is we will be covering today. I'm going to start off with a quick reminder of CSCS's role within the industry and the strategic direction of the scheme. I'll then move on and introduce you to the CSCS Alliance, which is made up of the 38 card schemes that display the CSCS logo on their 2.1 million cards. And you will see the importance of the Alliance as we start to take you through the presentation. I'll then take you through GoSmart, its closure, and its replacement, CSCS Smart Check. At that point, I'm going to hand you over to Gary, who will take you through the more technical aspects of Smart Check, the different ways it can be used, and Gary will finish off with a quick look at the My CSCS app. And at that point, we're going to hand you over to Matthew to begin the Q&A section. Okay, so that's all the intros completed. Let's jump in to the presentation. So here I just want to spend a few moments just reminding everybody on the strategic direction of the scheme and what's involved in applying for a card. So what is a CSCS card and how do I get one? Well, CSCS cards, they provide proof that individuals working on construction sites have the appropriate training and qualifications for the job that they do on site. And by ensuring the workforce are appropriately qualified, the card plays its part in improving standards and improving safety on UK construction sites. In the vast majority of cases, there are two key criteria for a card. Number one, you need to have passed or be in the process of achieving a nationally recognised qualification. That is by and large the NVQ, but we do accept alternatives to the NVQ. Secondly, you must have passed the appropriate level of the CITB Health, Safety and Environment test, and you must have passed that within the previous 2 years of making your application. There are over 2 million cards in circulation displaying the CSCS logo. 1.1 million of those cards belong to CSCS, but there's another million cards or so that belong to one of the 37 other card schemes that also display the CSCS logo on their card. And collectively, the 38 card schemes displaying the logo, we all come together under the banner of the CSCS Alliance. And there on the screen now, you should be seeing the logos of all the 38 members of the Alliance. I'm sure you'll be familiar with a number of those card schemes up on the screen. Now, the Alliance members, yes, they do tend to be smaller in terms of card numbers than CSCS, but they represent the real specialist sectors within construction. So we are talking about the likes of plant, of demolition, scaffolding, to name but a few. But the thing that unites and bonds all 38 Alliance members together is our strategic direction. And the strategic direction of all the Alliance members is to ensure that cards are only issued to those who have achieved the appropriate qualifications for their occupation. This is a policy that's been driven by the Construction Leadership Council. It's been in place for nearly 10 years now, and in that time, over 600,000 previously unqualified workers have gained a recognised qualification. And that's how the Alliance is pushing up and driving up standards within the industry. Now, there's a few reasons why I've introduced you to the Alliance at this stage of the briefing. Firstly, it's the Alliance who have designed, who have developed the CSCS Smart Check software. A few years ago, we all got together to resolve a particular issue, which I'll come on to later, but the result was the introduction of CSCS Smart Check. Secondly, it's the Alliance, as I've just said, who are driving up the standards and safety within the industry by ensuring those cards are only issued to those who have achieved the appropriate qualifications for their occupation. And this is where the card reading software plays a critical role in supporting the strategic direction of the Alliance. And that's by ensuring only appropriately qualified workers gain access to sites and that they only carry out the roles that they are qualified to do. And finally, Smart Check, you're going to hear this a number of times today. It's the only card checking system within construction in the built environment that verifies all 2.1 million cards belonging to the 38 CSCS Alliance members. It doesn't matter what card turns up on site, as long as it's an Alliance member, it's displaying the CSCS logo, it's compatible with Smart Check, and you'll be able to verify the details on that card. So I just want to now take a quick look at the outgoing GoSmart. I don't want to spend too long on this, as obviously we need to get you up to speed with Smart Check. But this is just a bit of history, a bit of context setting, so that you can understand where Smart Check has come from. So pre-2010, all CSCS cards were simply pieces of plastic, no technology embedded into them at all. So it kind of limited their usefulness, but it also made them prone to forgeries. So if you knew what you were doing, it wasn't too difficult to forge a CSCS card. And pre-2010, we started to see a rise in fake cards. And in response to that, we introduced the Smart Check, which contained the electronic chip, which stores the details that are printed on the card. And this could then be verified by the GoSmart software. So this helped us to tackle fake cards, but it also provided a consistent method to carry out card checks and improve access control. Since 2010, GoSmart has consistently delivered for CSCS, and it's helped us to raise standards and safety within the industry. However, despite the success of GoSmart, it isn't used by all 38 card schemes within the Alliance. In fact, it's only used by 12 of the 38 schemes. So the majority of the Alliance members, that's 26 of the 38, do not use GoSmart. And since 2010, the other card schemes within the Alliance, quite rightly, they've been going about their own business and they've developed their own card checking systems. And that's resulted in multiple and incompatible systems operating across the industry at the same time. So some of those other card schemes, they use systems much like CSCS, they use NFC, near field communication. Others use QR codes, whether that's a dynamic QR code printed on the card, or it's a dynamic QR code and within a virtual carding system, or it's a static QR code that is printed on the card. Other card schemes rely on online portals, so you log into a website, you punch in some of the details on the card to have the card verified in that way. And others, they simply rely on a phone call being made into a site office. in order to verify the details on a card. But the important point I'm trying to make here is that these other systems, and I include GoSmart in this, they were designed in isolation and they are incompatible with each other, and that's led to confusion at the site gates. And that confusion, it's resulted in poor card checking practices sneaking back in, creeping back into the industry. So busy sites, they don't have time to identify the relevant system for the relevant card. So some sites have slipped back into using visual inspections or even no inspections at all. And visual inspections, they're simply not good enough. They're not robust enough. A visual inspection, it will never tell you if a card is fake, and it won't tell you if a card has been cancelled due to fraudulent practices. And the only way you're going to identify all of this is via an electronic check. So the reality is the card schemes over the last 10 years or so, the card schemes, and I include CSCS in this, we have unintentionally created confusion at the site gates by developing multiple and incompatible card checking systems. And taking all that on board, the Construction Leadership Council, the CLC, and they heard the feedback that was coming from the industry. They understood that the confusion was happening at the site gates, and they understood that card checking practices, they weren't improving, which is what we thought the technology would do. In fact, they were declining and deteriorating. So the CLC, they stepped in to resolve this issue. And effectively what happened back in 2020, the CLC, the Construction Leadership Council, that they announced that all card schemes must use smart technology using a common interface without the need to manually enter data. So effectively what the CLC were saying was, it doesn't matter what card turns up on site, as long as it displays the CSCS logo, we want to see one system that verifies the details on all 2.1 million cards that belong to the Alliance. So that was the challenge. That's the challenge that the CLC set the Alliance. So what the Alliance did, what we did is we took that away. We set up a working group within the Alliance, which was made up of members from across the Alliance. It was headed up by ECS's Andy Reeks. And over the period of 18 months, 2 years, this group, through consultation with the industry, developed and decided that the app was the best way, the CSCS Smart Check app was the best way to meet the CLC's objective. And the whole idea was that the app, it would be rolled out, first of all, simply just as that, as an app. It wasn't intended to replace the existing card checking systems, the site access systems that are currently in place today. So it wasn't originally designed to replace turnstiles and card checking machines. The idea was, let the app settle in, let it roll out across the industry, and when we're all comfortable with the technology, it's doing what it should be doing, then we would convert that technology so it can be installed into the existing site access systems, and where we can, remove GoSmart and put in Smart Check in its place. So the Alliance, we launched the app in April 2022. It's been a really successful launch. It's had a couple of upgrades along the way, a couple of improvements have been made, but it's now averaging 20,000 reads a month. That's 20,000 reads that previously were not happening. This is these sites that don't have the site access systems, they don't have the turnstiles, the card reading machines, those sites that historically relied on just a quick visual inspection or no inspection at all, they now have, they can download the app for free, and they could start verifying all the cards that were coming onto those sites. So we're now averaging about 20 or more than 20,000 reads a month, and we've been doing that for quite some time now. So it's been a really successful launch. We're now all very confident in the technology. It's doing exactly what we want it to do. It's now, we need to begin that process of integrating a version of the app software into all those existing systems up and down the country that have GoSmart installed in it. That way, we're going to reach over 500,000 reads per month. That's our ambition. That's our target, that when GoSmart is fully removed and Smart Check is installed, we'll be reaching 500,000 and beyond reads every month. And it's only at that point, when all GoSmart is replaced, can we confidently go back to the CLC and we can say, we have now delivered on your expectations. There is only one piece of software that's verifying all 2.1 million cards that are out there within the industry. So just to summarize this then, and the benefits around Smart Check. So Smart Check, it is the only system that verifies all 2.1 million cards within the industry. It helps employers ensure that workers hold the correct training and qualifications for their occupation. We all know that the two areas with the highest risk within the industry and the highest rates of serious accidents are working at height and operating plant. Smart Check will give you a very quick confirmation if workers are qualified and trained to work in those environments. So that way, it helps ensure only those with the right qualifications are carrying out the right jobs. It helps everybody, employers and principal contractors, the card schemes themselves. It helps tackle fraud. It ensures every card is genuine. It ensures every card is in date, and it will alert you if there's suspected fraudulent activity taking place around a card. And there's a very straightforward fraud reporting process within the software as well. So when you roll all of that together, what do you get? You get a single system that improves standards and safety within construction and the built environment. So that's me finished for now. I hope that gives you a feel for why GoSmart is to be withdrawn, why Smart Check is the way forward now, and why we are rolling it out across the rest of the industry. What I'm going to do now is hand you over to Gary, and Gary's going to take you through the different ways in which you can use Smart Check. So over to you, Gary.
Morning, everyone. As Alan said, I'm Gary Mortimer, Head of Operations at CSCS. I'm just going to take you through some of the different ways of checking and validating cards post GoSmart. Alan's already touched on those briefly, but I'm just going to go into a bit more detail. Obviously, there is the CSCS Smart Check app, which is already in place. That's been in place for a fair while now, and I'll touch on that in a bit more detail shortly, because I'm hoping some people have already started using that. But first, I'm going to start on the integration with existing site access gates and site induction systems that some employers have built into their current solutions. So as one of the developments that's taken place with the ceasing of GoSmart is an application program interface, an API, that can automatically validate the cards through your existing site induction and site access platforms. Some of you may already have partnerships with IT partners who have embedded that software into your solutions. All of the IT partners that we have worked with through GoSmart have been contacted and consulted around the API for Smart Check, and they should have reached out to you already in relation to integrating Smart Check into your existing solutions. If they haven't, then please get in touch with them, because obviously the 31st of March is not far away now. So we need to make sure that those solutions have the Smart Check API linked into them. This API checks all of the cards, like Alan has said, for all of those CSCS Alliance members. So you can read and validate all of those via various different mechanisms. The manual check is the main one that's used via a lot of the site access and site induction systems. So selecting the scheme, entering the surname and registration number, but there is also the capability for NFC reads and QR code reads through those site access systems, if that's already embedded into those solutions. If it's not, then I'm sure that the IT partners can look to build something around that for you. But say it's making sure that you reach out to those now, because it's not far away before that comes into fruition to needing those cards to be read. Because as of the 31st of March, GoSmart will cease. So on the 1st of April, any access that has previously been through the GoSmart API will no longer work. So you'll need to have a Smart Check API for those cards to read. Just some of the bits to highlight as part of that Smart Check API, CSCS Smart Check API. There is a tripartite agreement that needs to be agreed between all parties. So this is from CSCS's perspective on behalf of all of the Alliance, with the IT partner who manages the software for you, as well as you as an employer. So you'd need to discuss that with them, with the IT partner. They have access to all of that information, so we'll be able to supply that to you so that can all be signed and agreed, and any relevant commercials relation to that as well. So you'd need to discuss those directly with your IT partner to ensure that that software is installed prior to the 31st of March. Following on from that, with regards to the API, that will be a continual development as well. So at the moment, the main API has the access to read the card data. With all of the changes that are going on in industry, with the Building Safety Act and additional requirements that may come in around fire safety training, etc., we will be looking to add additional developments into the Smart Check API to allow for additional courses and qualifications to be read through the different Alliance members to support you as employers. So it's a full record of their qualifications and training. Can you just go on to the next slide, please, Alan? So I mentioned CSCS Smart Check. That's been in place for quite a while now, as Alan mentioned through his slides. There's a lot of people already using that, with 20,000 reads per month currently happening. But with the removal of GoSmart, we now need people to transfer across to CSCS Smart Check, so everyone's using that prior to the 31st of March. So it's recommended that you download that now. It's free to download from both the Apple and Google Play Store. If you search My CSCS or CSCS Smart Check, sorry, within the stores, you'll be able to find that. Or you can go to the CSCS website, cscs.uk.com/Smart Check, and there's all of the information there, along with links to those to download those. There's also some useful videos on that web page as well, on the CSCS web page, around how to use the CSCS Smart Check app. But just as a brief in terms of how that kind of works, it's similar to the GoSmart app that's currently in existence, in terms of there's three methods of checking a card. One is a manual check, which would be selecting the card scheme. As I say, there's 38 different card schemes to select from, entering the surname of the individual, as well as the registration number. And then that will then pull through the information for that card holder, as long as they hold a valid card. It'll also show if they've got a cancelled or expired card as well. So it helps you to then manage in terms of whether a card needs to be renewed, etc. The second is a QR code. So some of the Alliance members have a QR code within their cards, either via a virtual card or on the cards themselves. So for those, you can use the QR code scanning, and it will validate that card, so you can confirm all of the details as well. And the third one is NFC, again, which Alan touched on earlier. So the CSCS card that has an NFC chip in it. So if you hold the mobile device to the CSCS card, that will then read and validate that information. And there's some of the other Alliance partners as well that also have that NFC within their card, so it can be read in exactly the same manner through that CSCS Smart Check app. What we will be doing is, because all of the different Alliance members have different ways of checking their cards, so some are manual only, some are manual and QR, some are manual on NFC, some are all. We will put onto the Smart Check page a list of all of the card schemes, along with what routes you can use to check and validate their cards. Some will be going through a transition process. So at the moment, if they may be manual at the moment, so may introduce a QR code or an NFC card at some point, so we'll update that as and when card schemes introduce that, as well as communicating that through the various methods that we have to industry, to ensure that you're up to date in terms of how to check and validate these cards. But I highly recommend you download that app now. As I say, it's free to download and can be used straight away. If you can just go on to the next one. So CSCS Smart Check web portal. So as you're probably aware, GoSmart has a online desktop version for checking and validating cards. So we are in the process of developing an online desktop version for CSCS Smart Check as well. That is in its final stages. We're almost there. It's just in UAT testing, and we're hoping to release that shortly. So you'll be able to check cards in exactly the same way that you can through the GoSmart desktop version. But this will obviously include all of the Alliance cards rather than just the cards that are currently existing within the CSCS GoSmart platform. And that will make sure that that's available, ready for the launch. And we'll communicate that to everyone who's attended this webinar once that's available, as well as through our normal communication channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the website, etc., to confirm when that's available. There is some slides later on, and I'll take you through in terms of what the requirements are going to be in terms of checking the card, but it's quite a straightforward process, and similar to that was kind of already in existence with the GoSmart arena. One thing I did want to touch on is around the CITB online card checker. So this is another way of checking and validating some cards. So CSCS, CPCS, and scissors for the scaffolding sector, they are currently within the CITB online card checker and can be accessed via a data entry through that card checker. That will remain, that will still be available. But what I did want to highlight is around the registration numbers that are used in terms of the cards. So some of you may be aware or may not be aware that CITB previously administered the CSCS scheme, but as of December 2019, this was handed over to CSCS to make arrangements to administer it ourselves and put together a solution to deliver those cards, because CITB felt that card production and contact center and administration wasn't really within their remit as an organisation. They need to focus more on what their requirements and role was within industry. So as part of that, we developed the CSCS Online application system, as well as the various other bits, My CSCS, a new card production and contact center in relation to that. With that change resulted in any new cards that are applied for will have a new registration number, a different registration number to that is on the CITB online card checker. So anyone who applied pre-December 2019 may well still have the same registration number that was issued by CITB at the time, because that links into their online system, whereas anyone who applied post-December 2019 will have an 8-digit registration number. This is only for new applicants. Those renewing will still keep the same registration number as they go through, but those applying for a new card will have a new 8-digit registration number. So if you check the CITB online card checker, the number on their card may well be different to that appears on the CITB online card checker. So just want to make that clear. And also, there is also some data that does not appear for CSCS cards in the CITB online card checker, because we provide the data to CITB in terms of card holders. And the issues that we sometimes get is the data that was supplied to CITB for, say, the CITB Health Safety Environment Test doesn't quite match the data that we have. So that individual may have two records or not be able to have that data merged. So if you check that CITB card checker, you may not be able to see a card. That's not a guarantee that they don't hold a card. So please make sure you use the CSCS Smart Check app or the CSCS online desktop version once that's available to check and validate that card to make sure that it's a valid card. But I just want to make that clarification. The CITB card check is not going. That will still be available as a solution to check cards, but it's recommended to use the CSCS Smart Check desktop version and the app, because that is the most up-to-date and reliable information, and also covers all of the Alliance schemes, whereas the CITB card checker you can only use for CSCS, CPCS, and scaffolding at the moment. One thing also just to highlight is in terms of the cards that will read through the desktop version and also through the Smart Check app, it will include all of the card schemes that are currently within GoSmart that carry the CSCS hologram. It won't include any of the card schemes that did not carry the CSCS hologram. So for example, the Home Builders Federation have a card that is for their visitors to their sites. That is not a CSCS logo card, doesn't meet the requirements in terms of that for being in Smart Check, because it's not part of the Alliance, so will not read and validate via the CSCS Smart Check. They do have a new card checking solution in place, so I recommend you go to their website for HBF, and you'll be able to view information about how to check and validate their cards moving forward. Next slide, please, Alan. Right, so this is just an example of what the desktop version will look like once it's available. It's similar to GoSmart in terms of the data that you need to enter. So say there'll be a drop down for the different card schemes that you need to search through to see which one, and they'll be in alphabetical order. You'll also be able to search by entering data for the card scheme as to which one you need to find. You then enter the registration number for that individual, followed by the last name, surname of that individual, and then you'd then be able to check and verify that card. There is a recapture process on that just to prevent from data scraping in relation to that. So you may need to go through that process to select the images as part of the recapture process, but then you'll then be able to verify those cards. And let's say the next screen will show in terms of what that kind of looks like. So this should be available shortly within the next week or so, and we'll communicate that out to everyone once that is available, so you can start using that ASAP, because obviously this will be the solution that you'll need to use post GoSmart, and will encompass all of the Alliance card schemes, which Alan mentioned earlier, and showed the image of all of those card schemes. If you can just go to the next slide, please. So here's an example of what it will look like in terms of a card read and card check. So you'll see active cards. It will show the photo of the individual, the card type that they hold, occupations, qualifications, expiry date for those individuals. It'll also show any expired and cancelled cards, so you can see if there's any cards that you may need to renew that have gone out of date, so you can then make arrangements for those. One thing to highlight is that within GoSmart, that you previously used to get a render image of the CSCS card or some of the Alliance member cards. That will not be available in Smart Check for now. At the moment, it will just look like this in terms of the individual photo and the individual data around the card, but it will show whether it is active or valid. That is a future development that we're potentially looking at. But as you can quite appreciate, with all of the 38 different Alliance members, they all have different versions of cards and looks and feel to cards as well. Sorry, a bit of a problem with that. So at the moment, it will just be a visual in terms of the data held on that card. One thing just to highlight as well is around the occupations and qualifications. So in particular for CSCS, I know one of the questions has always been, how do we highlight whether someone gained their card by industry accreditation, for example? So on the back of the card, it will say the occupation title, followed by the wording industry accreditation. And on the app, it'll be exactly the same, occupation title, followed by industry accreditation as their route to gaining that card. So for those people, as I'm sure you're aware, with the comms that's previously gone out, those people will need to upskill and make sure that they've achieved the appropriate qualification prior to the expiry of their card, so they can progress onto a new skill card post December 2024, once the industry accreditation comes into effect. So to say, all of that data will show in terms of those reads, whether you do it via the desktop or Smart Check app, or through the API as well, moving forwards. Can you just go on to the next slide, please, Alan? So just a quick recap. So CSCS Smart Check is available as an API. So that's already been released out to all of the IT partners. So please get in touch with your IT partner if you haven't done so already, or if they haven't been in contact with you, to make sure that's integrated within your solutions for your site access and site induction moving forward. GoSmart will be turned off on the 31st of March. So you need to make sure that you're having those discussions now, because from the 1st of April, any solution that is currently embedded in that will not work. And we need those cards to be read for your solutions moving forward. And as Alan mentioned earlier as well, CSCS Smart Check is able to verify all 2.1 million card holders across the Alliance schemes, whereas the GoSmart solution at the moment only has a minimal number of those card schemes. And also there's various different solutions, so you're having to go to maybe an online checker or contact for one, whereas now it's all in one place for you to check and validate each of these cards. Next slide, please, Anne. So I just wanted to touch on the My CSCS app as well. So with the introduction of CSCS Online in December 2019 for CSCS and individuals to apply for cards online, we also introduced the My CSCS app. So this is a free to download app as well, similar to CSCS Smart Check, whereas this is for individual card holders only. This is for them to gain access to their card as a virtual card, as well as update their details, manage their account. They can raise support tickets, etc. as well through that app as well. And there'll be additional functionality that comes into that as time goes on as well. You can see from the image in the background on the presentation, there's an image of the card as well as a QR code. So that is the virtual card of the individual that they can have on their mobile device. So when they're turning up the site, if they've forgotten their hard copy card, they can get that scanned using Smart Check and it will read and validate that card. It's also a handy tool for them to find their registration number. I know they often turn up to sites and they haven't got their hard copy card. So for you to check and validate a card, if you're doing a manual check, for example, and they've forgotten their registration number, they can go into the app, which show an image of the card, the registration number, all of their qualification data. So you've got that to hand to check and validate and read that information. So as I say, it's free to download. If you make sure that your employees are downloading the app and using that. One thing to highlight is that anyone who applied post My CSCS going into place will have automatically got an email and a login details before logging into My CSCS. They may not have done that, so if they do try to log in, they can go to forgot my password and reset that and then be able to log in and access their card information. For anyone that applied pre-December 2019, pre-My CSCS coming in place, they will have an old legacy card and will not have had a virtual card issued at that time, but they can claim their card to their My CSCS account. They would log on to create an account for My CSCS, and there's an option to claim my card. As part of that, they'll enter their details, so their surname, registration number, date of birth, etc. And as part of that process, it will then pull through the card to that individual's account. So they've then got access to that as a virtual card. This is just a way of helping cut down costs for industry. We know how some people lose their cards. So rather than having to purchase a new hard copy card, they've got their virtual card there and then for gaining access to site. One other thing to highlight is that with the virtual cards, these are available to card holders within approximately 15 minutes of their card application being processed. So rather than them having to wait for their hard copy card to arrive in the post, they can use their virtual card for gaining access to site instantly once that application is processed. In terms of the information around the app, you can go to cscs.uk.com/mycscs, and it gives more information around the app and how to download that. So I recommend that you get your operatives to download the app as soon as possible. I hope that's been of help, but I'm now going to pass over to Matt. Alan can go to the next slide because we've got some questions in the chat area, and Matt's just going to manage those.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Yeah, I've had quite a few questions come in, so thanks everyone for that. I've tried to sort of focus on the questions that aren't sort of particularly covered everywhere else in the slide. So a question from Claire Rutherford in terms of what to do if there are problems with the Smart Check app. So I can kind of take this, Gary, if you like. There is a help and support section within the app if you are struggling. Gary, I believe the advice is to try and manual check if the other options aren't necessarily working. And there's a help and support section within the website that's coming soon as well. So hopefully that clears things up for you. Definitely one for you, Gary, is a bit more technical from Des. Is it possible for non-site access companies to see the documentation around the new API to prepare code and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we can get the API documents sent out to anyone who needs it. At the moment, the API has only been released by the working group for those that have systems that integrate with site access gates and site induction processes. So for individuals needing access to site. So if you've got a solution that you're either developing or have in place that you want to embed with it, we can get that API documentation sent out. So if you send us your details, we can look into that. But if it's a solution outside of that, then we need to understand what that solution is, so that we can take that to the working group to see whether the API can be released in relation to that solution. But by all means, get in contact with us. We can send you the relevant information around the process and the documentation for the API as well.
Thanks, Gary. A more general one from Paul Taylor and Caroline Atkins. Just wanted to clarify that Smart Check is for sites to use rather than necessarily for cardholders. It's for checking the cards of obviously cardholders, but primarily for employers, I would say.
Yes, yeah. So CSCS Smart Check is solely for the site access. It's not for the individuals, because they're not checking their own cards. It's for those sites to manage that process of who is coming on site, making sure that they're appropriately qualified, have the right card for the job that they're coming on to do. Whereas My CSCS, which I mentioned, is solely for the individual, because that's their account and their card that's held on it.
Thanks, Gary. Jackie Allen, just you kind of touched on virtual cards within My CSCS. How will Smart Check work with Lantra's e-cards and sort of other virtual cards that some of the CSCS Alliance schemes have?
So they'll work in the same way. So a lot of these virtual cards have a QR code as part of their check-in validations. So you'll be able to use the QR code scanner from Smart Check to scan that QR code from their e-virtual cards to validate them. If they haven't got a QR code as part of their e-card, the data should be within that e-card in terms of surname, registration number. So you'd then be able to do a manual validation using that, selecting the scheme and entering the surname and registration number. So there should be a way of checking and validating those. But say if there is any issues that crop up in terms of when checking and validating these cards, Matt mentioned there is the help and support section, which gives further guidance in relation to that. But if the cards are still not reading, then it's to escalate those. There is a fraud option within each of the solutions as well. So the Smart Check app, as well as the desktop version, so that if you get a card that is not reading and validating, you can escalate that to be looked into by the relevant scheme, in case it could potentially be a fraudulent card, a fake card, or a card that has been revoked due to fraudulent activity. And just touching on the fraudulent activity one, I know Alan mentioned it, but it's key to make sure that cards are being regularly checked, not just checked once at the start of a project and then left for a few months, because we do have, unfortunately, instances where cards are revoked due to fraudulent activity, where we've been notified by the relevant awarding organisation that the test or qualification has had to be revoked because it wasn't undertaken by the individual. And often these people won't return their cards to us, so they'll turn up to site for yourself with the actual hard copy card, whereas if you check and validate it through the CSCS Smart Check app, it would not validate because it has been revoked by the relevant scheme. So it's just making sure that those regular checks are carried out.
Thanks, Gary. Someone from Daniel Christou who asks, is there a function to kind of digitally store the card data? I know you mentioned about the render of the image that won't be available on Smart Check, but are you able to digitally store the card data or information after validating, or is it a live check and validation only?
So for the CSCS Smart Check app, the data does store in the background in the app for CSCS cards only at the moment. We're in discussions with the other Alliance members as well around their card data potentially storing in the same manner. That will only be stored for a short period of time though. So you can then go into that to then download that as a CSV if you wish to, so you can see who has gained access to site in relation to that. And we will be providing more update information on the CSCS Smart Check webpage around how to utilise that moving forward.
Thanks, Gary. I'm just going to kind of bundle a couple of questions here because they're sort of related to CITB qualifications. So will Smart Check show other qualifications such as SMSTS and Triple STS? And also will sort of touchscreen CITB health, safety, environment test details be sort of visible on Smart Check after a read as well?
At the moment, no. but there is discussions with CITB at present around their construction training register, around gaining access to that. And this kind of links into the Building Safety Act work that's going on around competence frameworks and additional training and qualifications that are going to potentially be required as part of that Building Safety Act. So the plan is to link into the CITB construction training register, which holds a lot of this additional training qualifications and fire safety training, etc., which can then be read once that card is also validated at the same time. So that is another phase to CSCS Smart Check, but it's not currently in place at the moment. So to see that the CITB Health Safety Environment Test, Site Safety Plus and SMSTS, that would be something that you'd have to go through the CITB online card checker for at the moment. But as I say, we are in discussions as to how that can read and validate at the same time as the CSCS card moving forward.
Thank you. And one from Kevin Holmes, will because I know GoSmart kind of used to work with a sort of USB plugin to laptops. Is that kind of how the website is working? It'd be primarily inputting information rather than plugging anything physical into your laptop, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so for the web portal, it'll be solely for data entry. So entering the cardholder data, there won't be a plugin for that.
Great. Thank you very much, Gary. I'll pass back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Gary, and thank you everybody on the webinar today. I just want to finish off with a couple of signposts. Firstly, the CSCS website, cscs.uk.com, lots of information on there about Smart Check, the Q&As. There's also videos on there about the different ways in which the app can read the various cards. The best way to keep up to date with pretty much everything that's going on within CSCS is to sign up to our free newsletter. If you go onto the homepage of the CSCS website, you simply punch in your email address and you will start to receive a free copy of our newsletter. It's published every 6 to 8 weeks. It will come out and it will give you an overview of all the work that's taking place within CSCS. If you want to be the first to find out what's going on, please follow us on our social media channels, X and LinkedIn. As soon as we make a decision on anything, we will put it out on those channels. And there'll be lots of updates coming out over the coming weeks and the coming months, all around the withdrawal of GoSmart and the introduction of Smart Check. We also have our YouTube channel, so lots of content on there, lots of useful videos, and all those videos that we've currently produced around the Smart Check app are available to view on YouTube. So they're all really useful resources to keep up to date with what's going on in CSCS. And finally, just want to finish off, CSCS has recently employed a business development lead, and that is Mark Spillman. Mark has just joined the company in the last couple of days. Mark is listening in on the call. Mark's role will be leading on the integration from GoSmart to Smart Check. Mark has 20 years of account management experience and in the technology sector as well, so he's well placed to lead on this transition. It was Mark who will be very shortly will be reaching out to the IT partners. He'll be reaching out to the employers. He'll be making the introductions where required. But Mark will be leading on that tri-part agreement process between CSCS, the IT partner, and the employer. So you will get very familiar with Mark. He will be reaching out to you all in the coming days, the coming weeks, and the coming months. And finally, just to finish off, thank you very much for your questions today. We will be putting any new questions that we haven't previously captured. They will go on to our website and you can get up to speed with all the questions on our website. But if you have anything new that comes up over the next couple of days, over the next few weeks, when you're out talking to your colleagues in the industry, please do email us at communications@cscs.co.uk if any new questions or any new queries come up. So that is it from the CSCS team today. I hope you find that valuable. I hope you find it useful in us explaining to you how Smart Check is to become the #1 piece of software for checking all those 2.1 million cars within the industry. So thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.